everyone, my name's Heather and welcome back to my channel. Today's video is going to be a wrap up of all of the books that I read in the month of June. So I read a total of 6 books this past month. I think that averages out to about 5 days per book. I read for just under 2,000 minutes, give or take a couple, and I believe that's about 32 hours. And overall, I'd say it was a really successful month. I'm gonna get into each of the books, but I am pretty impressed with all of the books that I read in June. First up is none other than Daisy Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid. First off, Taylor Jenkins Reid, like, how can you go wrong, you know? She's a great author. Basically, this is the story of a 1970s rock band, Daisy Jones and the Six, how they became a band, what kept them going as a band, and eventually what led to their downfall. So one thing to note about this book is that it's told in like an interview or like a documentary style. You can see each name of the people in the book, the characters. It's weird to call them characters because it's so realistic. So it's all told in that form, which was super interesting because I actually listened to the audiobook while reading the book. I know that's a little bit extra, but I really enjoyed that experience. That was the first time I ever did anything like that. It's actually the first audiobook that I've ever listened to. It was pretty cool because there was a full cast. Because of that interview style, it really felt like the characters were speaking directly to you, and I loved it, honestly. The only thing I would say is that I guess I read faster than they talk, because at some points I was like, okay, like you can say that a little bit faster, but I think that's just a me thing. I enjoyed the whole thing, but I would say the last 100 pages or so were fantastic. There's like a little bit of a twist, and it had me crying. It had my jaw on the ground. I know some people question whether Daisy Jones and the Six is a real band or not, and it gives you that feeling. The exciting thing is that it's actually going to be made into a TV show. I think they're filming it, or I don't know the exact timeline, but it's gonna be a TV show, which is so exciting. I can't wait to watch it and like see it come to life. I ended up giving this a 5 stars. I would say just make sure you know what you're going into before you start reading it. Like, make sure you understand you're not getting like a traditional novel, if that makes sense. The next book that I read in June is Conversations with Friends by Sally Rooney. This book is written by the same author of Normal People, and that book I believe I gave 4 stars. I kind of want to reread it because I feel like I might give it a different rating if I read it again, but anyway, that's besides the point. So I didn't know exactly how I would feel about this book, but I was pleasantly surprised. This is the story of these 2 college students, Francis and Bobby, who end up meeting this couple a little bit older than them, maybe like 10 years older than them, I don't exactly remember. The older couple is Nick and Melissa, and as the book goes on, you see their friendship grow, and you kind of get to experience knowing each character intimately. I don't want to give too much away, but it's very much character based. So this is told from Francis's point of view. Francis's. This is told from her point of view. I ended up giving this 5 stars as well, which some people might not agree with, but I don't know, something about it had me like hooked the whole time. I think Sally Rooney does a great job of making relationships seem realistic in the sense of what happens and that there's layers in the relationship and that kind of thing. And it's also going to be a TV show on Hulu. Actually, it's already out. Yeah, it's already out because what's his name is in it? Joe Alwyn? Yeah, that's his name. You know, Taylor Swift's boo. Okay. The next book that I actually mentioned in my previous video is We Were Liars by E. Lockhart. So essentially this is a young adult novel about the Sinclair family, who is this rich family that owns a private island off the coast of Martha's Vineyard. and they go there every summer. But one summer, something mysterious happens, and the main character, Katie, is trying to figure out what happened. She doesn't remember anything. And then when she figures that out, kind of coming to terms with what exactly happened. So again, you know, I don't like to give too much away, especially with this book. Like, I'm not going to tell you anything more just because there's a wild twist. Once I came across this twist, I wanted to throw something, okay? I was reading on my Kindle, so I wasn't gonna throw that, but if I had the physical book on me, I think I would have thrown it across the room. That's how crazy it made me feel. Mostly angry. I definitely cried. I was angry, frustrated, and also like bamboozled, really. It took me forever to figure out what rating I wanted to give this book because I couldn't decide. It gave me so many emotions. All in all, I ended up giving it 4 stars. I felt like that was sufficient. So I was really on a roll this month because the next book I gave 5 stars, and that is Book Lovers by Emily Henry. Again, I had mentioned this in my previous video and said how much I was loving this book, and it did not disappoint. Like, this book, I was laughing out loud. And you can see, you should be able to see, look at all those tabs. I tabbed like half the book because I was just the banter. I should probably tell you what the book's about. This is the story of Nora and Charlie. They both live in New York and they're very much into New York. They work there. They're part of the literary world. I think Nora's a agent and Charlie's an editor, or maybe it's the other way around. I don't know, but they're both working with this author, and Nora is very much a workaholic. And so her sister, Libby, decides that they need to go on a girls' trip, just the 2 of them, and so they decide to go to Sunshine Falls, North Carolina. There's a reason they go there, but you kind of find that out as the book goes on. So Libby has this checklist of things that she wants her and her sister to complete during this. I think they go for about a month. So one of the things on the checklist is for Nora to meet a small town guy and kind of spark this romance, because Libby is definitely a hopeless romantic. She reads all the romance novels and she wants her sister to have one of her own. Sure enough, she ends up running into Charlie Lastra, who is the book editor from New York. Something keeps pushing them together. Like, they keep running into each other and you kind of see like, why is he even in this town? Like, what are the chances? So as I was saying earlier, the banter in this book, oh my God, mostly between Charlie and Nora, but even like Charlie's mom and the people like at the restaurant that they go to, and like Libby, it's just so many parts were hysterical. I think they were just like, some of them were just silly little phrases or like silly little dialogue, but I was laughing. Like, I don't want to tell you anything. There's nothing that would be a spoiler, but just like something as simple as Libby talking about Charlie and him going, "I'm right here," you know, like just little things like that. Like, this book, I think Charlie is my new favorite male character. Like, he could be my book boyfriend anytime. This was the first book I read by Emily Henry, and I cannot wait to read her others. I think she did a really good job of portraying a female protagonist who was a little bit different from the typical hopeless romantic, like kind of how Libby is. That would normally be the person that the romance novels centers around. But this one is more about a workaholic, like I said, who doesn't think she'll ever get a happy ending, pretty much. And I thought that was really cool. 5 stars once again. So I had such a fun time reading Daisy Jones and of course Evelyn Hugo that I decided to keep going along the Taylor Jenkins Reid list of books. And so the next book I read was Malibu Rising. Yeah, I don't know, she just makes every book so amazing that you don't want it to end, but you're also so enticed that you're like, no, I have to keep going. And so I read this super quickly. This is the story of the Riva family. You have Mick, who's the father, June, who's the mother, and then their kids. The story goes from the past to the present. The past being around the 60s, leading up to the present, in this case is the 80s, where Nina, who's the oldest daughter, is having the annual end of summer Riva party. The present portion is told over the span of 24 hours. It's all about the party, so you see exactly what went down during this crazy affair. It's just a really good book. I really enjoyed the way Taylor Jenkins Reid wrote about familial relationships, kind of the idea that just because something happened in your past or even your parents' past doesn't mean that it determines your future. I highly recommend, again, 5 stars. And finally, the last book I read in June, which I actually stayed up till like 3 or 4 a.m. last night finishing this book because, well, you'll see. It's called The 7 Days in June, and I had about 7 days to read it because I started the other day and I was determined to finish it while we're still in June. I told myself that's what I had to do, and I did it. Anyway, this is by Tia Williams. It's the story of Eva and Shane. Eva and Shane became friends when they were teenagers, and they had this wild, eventful week. Something happened. They stopped talking or seeing one another for 20 years. 20. That's a long time. They finally come across each other's paths again at this literary event because they're both authors. They end up reconnecting. They are forced to figure out their past and come to terms with what happened. It's told from the past and present perspectives, the past kind of going through different time periods throughout Eva's life, but then the present is told over, you guessed it, 7 days in June. Personally, I thought this was so good. I really enjoyed this book. Like, it's probably one of my favorites of the year. I tried to choose books by diverse authors, but for some reason this one, I don't know, I had never really read anything from this kind of perspective. I really enjoyed the fact that Tia Williams kind of emphasizing that yes, Black individuals have been oppressed in so many ways. At the same time, they have everyday life experiences. They're just not talked about enough. I'm going to continue to make a conscious effort to diversify the type of books that I read. I also feel that Tia Williams did an incredible job of making the relationship between these two characters very kind of realistic, in the sense of, again, not everything is linear. People make mistakes and we're all human. I think it was really beautifully and intentionally written. Something about it is very magical. This also brought out a lot of emotions from me, mostly being frustrated because of the way that the characters viewed themselves, and I wanted to just like give them a hug, you know? Ultimately, I really enjoyed this book. I gave this one 5 stars as well. I'm excited for more from her. So friends, these are the books that I read this past month in June. And can you believe 5 5-star reads? 5 in a month where I read 6 books. Like, how incredible is that? And a 4-star read? Like, this month was a good one. I hope next month is just as great, but I would love to know what you read in June and whether you've read any of these books, and also what you're looking forward to reading in July. So if you've made it this far, thank you so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you in my next video. Bye. That was like a weird bird. Anyway.